Haas.
Here.
Schrader.
Yes.
Espinoza. Williams.
Stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so we are currently in the public hearing, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so if we could have the presentation of the sale of working cash bonds not to exceed $3.8 million.
Perfect. And so, this, as we, I still got on the board over here, as we look at our kind of process, again, this does not actually, this isn't a final decision, there's actually no vote of any kind tonight. But our process as we move through this is to have a public hearing to make sure that everybody understands, has the opportunity to ask any questions, that's why Dustin's here. About the bond sales and what that looks like. So just as an overview, so when we sell these working cash bonds, we'll sell them this spring. The money will hit our coffers within a week or so of the bond sale. So we'll actually go in this year's fiscal budget. Since this is our 2-year cycle that we do for this, it was in our budget. It was something that we were anticipating doing because the conversation was to have it so our bond sales would actually increase our total tax rate by a nickel. We have an estimated net proceed of $3.675 million. Again, that increases our bond tax rate by a nickel, and it extends our repayment obligations from FY '28 to FY '30. And we'll look at that more in detail in a minute. So if we look at just that tax rate, the portion of the tax rate that's the bond repayment, kind of what that has looked like for us. FY '20 it was 46 cents, then 44, 42. In FY '23 it was 41 and a half. That's kind of been our target. Last year, because of our EAV jump, it dropped down to 37, and then this last year we bumped it back up to that 41 and a half cents. So again, that's that bond repayment, that anticipated rate. So our previous target was at 41 and a half cents, and because of the previous conversations that we've had, our future target's going to be a nickel higher than that, which is 46 and a half cents. That'll increase our total tax rate from 285 to 290. That extra nickel on $100,000 worth of market value is about $17 a year. If we look at our existing repayment schedule, again, as it sits now, 26, 27, 28. So as it sits now, we would be done with all of our repayments at the end of FY '28. So in our last entrance payment our last payment would technically be December of '27. And as we've done in the past, this will add 2 years onto that. So into FY '29, FY '30. So our last actual payment will be December 1st of '29 in that FY '30 year. So the bond proceeds going to fund facility improvements that we've had. Because our bond proceeds are going towards facility improvements, they're actually able to be tax-free on the investor end, and therefore the investors get a better rate, which means that we, when we borrow money, get a better rate. So we kind of want to take a minute to take some stock and say, okay, well, what are we selling these bonds for? Some of our solar project, the bond will help to finish paying that off. We just recently, even in this fiscal year, had some of the solar payments. Our last summer, Northbrook updates, and then the substantial HVAC updates that we have scheduled for this summer. All of those things will be paid for by this. This is a pretty cool picture. It's the solar field on top of Blackstone. And so, again, we're just going to kind of walk through some of those things that we just talked about. Our solar project, Northbrook upgrades, bleachers, and a hallway. And it's so funny because you look at this picture and you're like, yeah, neat, that's a hallway. You don't see all of that old angled glass that just looked dated and yucky. Thank you, perfect words. again, Northbrook, widening and updating the teacher's lounge. So Dustin will go into a little bit more about this. This is a picture of how would you like to work on this and keep this running, right? Yeah, no thanks. Thank God we have Dustin. And so this is, you know, he'll talk about this, part of our old boiler system, and all of that is now going to be replaced with this.
That's amazing.
Right, and this unit actually will provide heating and cooling to the room that it sits in, and also its sister room on the other side of the mason wall. And so each one of those units provides heating and cooling to two different rooms, two different thermostats.
So that big thing was just for that?
So these two big things here, the two boilers, that's what would circulate the steam through the whole building. And so then it'll be replaced with these individual units, so there'll be one of these per every other classroom, for sure. So I think it's important to kind of get a visual of what we're borrowing this for. And so, any comments from the board on that process, or? Are there any comments from the public on? The lawyer literally says I have to ask that, so. For sure. All right. Thank you, Madam President.
All right, so could we have a motion to adjourn our public hearing, please?
I move to adjourn the public hearing.
Second?
Second.
Roll call?
Landers,
Yes.
Cumitas,
Yes.
Haas, Schrader. Yes.
All right, could we call to order our regular meeting at 6:39 PM, please? Roll call.
Cumitas,
Yes.
Rapp, Landers,
Here.
Haas, Here. Schrader,
Here.
Espinoza, Williams.
We already did the pledge, so could we have a motion to approve the regular meeting agenda, please? And a second? Second. And roll call.
Schrader,
Yes.
Haas,
Yes.
Landers,
Yes.
Cumitas.
Yes. No visitors or public comment this evening.
Amen.
We'll move on to a motion to approve the consent agenda, please.
I move to approve the consent agenda, including 5.1 disposition of minutes, 5.2 payment of bills, 5.3 district treasurer's report, 5.4 interest and activity fund report, and cafeteria report, and 5.5 personnel report.
And a second? And roll call?
Haas,
Yes.
Schrader. Yes. Landers,
Yes.
Cumitas.
Yes. We have informational item 6.1, do we have any FOIAs?
We did have a FOIA. We annually get a Freedom of Information Act request from the Illinois Retired Teachers Association, so they can send out information packets to the people that are going to join their ranks. That was the only one we had.
Okay. 6.2, administrator reports, auditor presentation, and maintenance director.
So, I have a couple other things I would like to chat about, and we can do that later in discussion. We can get our presentations rolling. And we haven't seen Russ yet, so as Dustin gets started, I'll go out front and see it wandering around in the parking lot. But I will turn this over to Mr. Kent.
Watch your
He
step.
has a little presentation for us.
Easy.
All right, little introduction. So my name is Dustin Kent. I am the maintenance director here at Mendota District 289. I'm responsible for the care, upkeep, and functionality of all the district's facilities. We prepared a little presentation just to kind of highlight some of the things that we're working on. Mechanical uptime. So my first day here, me and Brad had a talk, and he said there's one thing that needs to happen is things need to work. So I started coming up with a preventative maintenance plan. Number one thing, preventative maintenance. The more we can stop things from happening or get eyes on things, the faster we can repair them. This also reduces expensive outsourcing. This picture that Brad had showed earlier, this is actually the condensate pump at Northbrook. The steam and condensate lines, so far this winter, I've had about 8 major leaks. We've handled 7 of them in-house, so
Wow.
huge savings there. This is a picture of a pipe going into a manifold at Lincoln. The geothermal system at Lincoln, the internal chemistry of the piping was extremely acidic. It was about 4.5 when we should be at 11. So it has been eating away at the internal piping, and the fear is always that there's 24 400-foot deep wells in the back of that, and we don't want any of them to leak. So we are slowly adjusting that internal chemistry. The reason we're going slowly is because, as I've found out, it's exposing leaks. As we put in rust inhibitors, increase the pH, we're removing that rust from the system and exposing a few leaks. But if we do it slowly, it's something that we can manage. Some process improvements. Floor maintenance, huge. There's been an extreme lack of floor stripping done in the previous decades. So we have started that. Here's a good example at Blackstone. This is the first grade hall at Blackstone, and this is something we stripped over the summer, and this is about 2 decades of wax buildup. When you walk in these buildings, you might not notice this, but I do. So, as we do this, you can make this VCT floor look as if it's brand new. Custodial task assignment and training, huge. There was a lot of inconsistencies in our custodial training and chemicals used. We're trying to get everything together so that it's one easy to follow thing. We actually, last year, I made a standard operating procedures book for all the custodians. I borrowed stuff from several other school districts around the whole country. I would just call them, and they were all very great to help us. So that's been very useful. Economical projects. Completing projects in-house to avoid costly outsourcing. That's probably my favorite thing that I do. It's something that, as I like to say, moves the needle. We save money, it's getting done, and we're not duct taping or band-aiding anything. It's getting done appropriately. And I reach out to professionals all the time, local carpenters, local electricians, for information. They pay taxes. They're all very happy to help. Some of the projects we've done is bathroom renovations, which I got some pictures here. This is from Northbrook. This is a before picture. And then just for less than $1,000, this whole bathroom got painted, new flooring, epoxy resin flooring, mirrors, and most of the money was just in toilet fixtures. Storage sheds. We have 2 storage sheds at Blackstone and 1 at Lincoln. Those got new roofs, new siding, new paint, new trim, basically brand new sheds. We spent less than $3,000 to do all 3 of them. A single shed would have been that much. Lighting, internal and external lighting, huge. Northbrook still has a lot of fluorescent lighting, which requires a ballast. Ballasts are like $20 to $30. Normally they would replace that. We can convert them to LED for about $20, saving money, and again, they last easily twice as long. Some other projects we've done. This is at Blackstone also in their steam room. This sink, it's hard to tell, but this was very close to the ground. But the sink was mainly used by the teacher in that room to clean paintbrushes and various other things. So for a fraction of the cost, we gave them a nice utility sink. Here's an example of the sheds. We also put the names on them just because I have some employees that like to do woodworking, so why not? And again, new siding, new trim work, painted, stained, new flooring. The one at Blackstone, actually, we tiled around the entire thing because it was sinking. This is at the track. This is the old locker room. You could almost see into this building. It was so bad. For very little money, again, we re-sided it with shiplap. It's going to get painted this spring. One of our more extensive projects was this front area at Northbrook. This overhang here, the ceiling part of it was A, starting to fall, B, none of the lighting worked because the wiring was so old. So we ended up tearing this whole entire ceiling out. Me and another employee over, I think it was election day, we did it. When no one was around, we discovered a host of issues. took care of them all, shored the whole thing up. I even communicated with Mock Carpentry to make sure I was doing things correctly, and new lighting, all integrated LEDs. Again, cost savings, it's brighter, and it just looks 100 times better. This is right from the teacher's lounge, which you saw. And this wasn't exactly in our scope with GRP to do this ceiling, but the grid was brown, and the ceiling tiles were all pretty decrepit and bad. So for very little money, we put all new ceiling tiles in and primed and painted the grid. Some future projects. We're gonna continue with the bathrooms and lighting. The concession stand at the track is in need of some TLC. Me and Brad are in discussions about what we're gonna do with that. And a major problem that I think almost all school districts have is storage. And again, me and Brad have been in discussions about how we wanna remedy that. We used to store a lot of stuff at the track. There's no good way of getting to that without driving over the track, which is very expensive and not worth driving over for a desk at times. But we're working on that, and who really knows what tomorrow will bring. Any questions?
No questions, but thank you so much.
Yeah.
Very impressed. Fantastic, we appreciate it.
You know, we're very fortunate to have Dustin as a part of the team. Not only that, does he have a really great skill set, but he's, you know, as they say, a Manila boy, and you know, he graduated high school here like 3 years ago or something.
Right.
And he has an incredible work ethic, he has incredible ownership of what's going on, and so he's really taken processes that have largely gone ignored for a while, and really brought him up to speed, brought him up to code, put new ideas in place, and so we could not. He hears this all the time. I'm surprised his head fits through the door, but
It's starting to get annoying, Brad.
yeah,
No.
for sure. No, we're super glad he's part of the team. Couldn't be happier. Thanks for
Thank you
presenting.
so much
Thank you.
for everything.
Yep.
And now, also somebody who saved our bacon. It's my pleasure to have Russ here. Russ Rumble has been working with Grins and Associates for, I'm gonna say, a day or two.
A period of time.
Yeah, some undisclosed period of time. Grins also has done the high school auditing for a while, and when we got unceremoniously dumped last year, I called Russ and I said, look, hey, come on, look, we're super good to work with, which he found out was actually true. And we can be late. It's all good. Just can you? And he's like, well, I don't know. It's like 3 weeks later. I'm like, I call him back. I'm like, come on, please. He goes, as long as it's as advertised. As long as you guys have your stuff in order. As long as you know what you're doing. And I'm like, look, we've got a group that, full disclosure, they haven't been doing it that long in their current jobs, but they're really good, right? They're conscientious and they put stuff in order and they take care of things. And I wasn't wrong, was I? Your team had a pretty good run.
Yeah, we cross our fingers if we pick up a new client. I will say that. It's like hold our breath. Hopefully things are in order and the folks are in place that can do the job. And the audit team is pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, for sure. So Russ,
So, yeah.
please.
Because we do have our share of ones that aren't, right? So I don't know if you've gotten the reports themselves, but I do have an email, so, yeah. That's what we need is more paper, right? I see everybody has a laptop, so we need more paper. Oh, you have it, okay. You get an A+, I tell you what. Yeah.
Sarah Gold.
I just left
Gold
it.
star.
I wouldn't say overachiever because I just leave stuff in here, right? Socorro knows.
So, awesome. So I am going to cover a few things in the audit report. I mean, the focus is really the handout, but I at least want to cover some information in the audit report. And the report itself, so You know, so really, when the board hires an auditing firm, we're auditing the financial statements, okay? Not necessarily producing them, we're auditing them. So the result of that audit is really, contained in pages, in this, it's the auditor's report, okay? And it's also, there's another report in here over internal control over financial reporting compliance and other compliance matters. So really, these pages right here are the most important pages as far, this is what you hire us for, these pages right here. We issued an unmodified opinion on the financial statements. That's the same opinion you've received in the past, which is, if we historically think about it, is, it was thought of as a clean opinion, if you will. So the opinion, is a unmodified opinion, and also the other report we didn't note, we did not note an internal control matter or a compliance matter, so that's all good, okay? I do have, and I think this is probably, yes, if you have the report, I highlighted mine at the bottom, it's, come back.
Passed it.
Yeah, so I think everybody needs to know about this paragraph right here, and I'm going to read it just because, the financial profile score, if you look at the handout and you look at the bottom, right, and you look at the financial profile score as it's calculated in the AFR, what, it goes from 3.9, 3.45, 3.2, okay, so that's been declining, right? And that, currently it's in financial review, and this paragraph explains some of that. So I'm going to read it, and I think everybody here is going to understand it once we read it. So the district has accounted for a capital project in the operation and maintenance fund. That is, you had construction that was being spent out of the operation and maintenance fund. In the previous fiscal year, the district abated $6.6 million of the working cash fund to the operation and maintenance fund. So not June 30th of '24, but the previous year, we moved, the district moved $6.6 million out of working cash over to the building fund to finance the capital project expenditures. During the current fiscal year, the operation and maintenance fund had a deficit $2.127 million. That is, you know, if we look at the revenue in the building fund minus expenses, it really did show a negative, right, $2.127 million. Most of which is a result of ongoing capital project. The operation and maintenance fund incurring $2.227 of capital outlay. That is, you know, payments towards the project, right? The current year operation and maintenance fund deficit is resulting in the requirement to have a deficit reduction plan. So ISB doesn't like the fact of the timing of the expenditures. Now, is that you might get a hold of ISB when they come out with the financial profile score and say, hey, wait, you know, I mean, this is really just a matter of we've moved $6.6 million in '23 and we've spent in 2024. Obviously, you spent some of it in 2023 as well. But, so we did note that in here, and that's kind of, you know, ISB should kind of focus in on that and say, oh, okay, maybe we need to modify the 3.2 to something different than 3.2. But I think that's an item in here that's worthy of noting. Let me see here. I think that was my next tab there. Yeah, I mean, if you looked at this financial statements, it would have the negative $2.127 million in the operation and maintenance fund. I don't know if you have page numbers on that, but on page 8, which sometimes they have numerous pages on these, but on page 8 has the fund balances of the district. And, you know, one thing we like to take a look at is, okay, the fund balance of the ed fund, building fund, transportation fund, and working cash fund. Those are the three, you know, the core funds of the district. I like to have about 3 months worth of expenditures remaining in fund balance, and the ed fund had 2.5 months. If you do the math, you know, to take the ending fund balance divided by the expenditures. I don't know that the operation and maintenance fund, that's still, again, that transfer of that bond proceeds really does skew that fund. And then transportation fund was about 3 months, so, you know, as far as fund balance goes, it seems like that's within parameters.
What is a good financial profile score?
4.0,
Okay, that's the best?
that's the best.
Okay.
Yep.
And the average?
Now when you say average,
All of the math.
you know, so if you look at where you have been on this, you know, so this is really at the bottom of the page here, it has the last 3 years, right? So that 3.9 might be a common number. Typically that 0.1 off of a 4.0 is because there's debt outstanding. So debt is part of that calculation. I would say the past couple years have been probably the deficit spending in the building fund is what's dragging things down. So, yeah, that being said, a lot of, I won't say across the board most districts, but I would say quite a few districts are going to be at that 3.9, less are at the 4.0. Some of them may be at 3.7, right? I mean, so it just falls in that range as far as what we typically see. And, you know, so this year, you know, that paragraph that we read, you know, there's a timing issue. I've never come across that until this year, and came across it here, came across it in another district. And we wrote, it wasn't identical, but it was like they received grant funds in fiscal year 23, they spent them in 2024, and it was $2 million, you know, it was a weird grant. So we did the same thing, we noted it in here, and it definitely impacted their financial profile score.
Would it have been less had we have only moved what we were gonna spend in that fiscal year and then done a second?
There would have been less, yes, it might have smoothed out some, to where you wouldn't have taken the hit maybe all in that year. So, yeah, I mean, ISB likes having basically a break even, right? But did you know how much you were going to spend? Did you know the timing of the construction? I don't know those answers, you know? Sometimes it's really tough to know how much should we move versus what is the cash flow of the project. So, I just have a couple more things here out of the financial report itself. You know, buried in the notes there is, and if you find it here, there is, you know, hey, there's outstanding debt, $4.6 million, $4.66 million as of June 30th. And if we flip the page, you know, it does have, hey, there's a debt repayment schedule in here too. You know, when if you didn't have to borrow additional funds in 2028, the district would be completely paid back, right? And I know you probably just had a meeting to
We just
discuss-
did.
Yeah,
I'm like,
working
you
cash,
just missed
right?
our presentation.
Yes, yes. So, and another nice thing here, you know, I don't know if it's ever been pointed out, but there's a legal debt limit, which calculates out to about 20 million. I don't know if this helps or not. I wish that I had page numbers on this, and I do not. But, you know, so there's a legal debt margin here. Yeah, so there's your debt, right? And then if you flip the page, there's the repayment, and here is the legal debt margin. So you know, there's a calculation, hey, you can only borrow so much, right? So $20 million roughly in this district as far as a legal debt margin. And there's 4.66 we said that's outstanding, so there's 15 million that the district could borrow. Now, as of December, you've already paid down some more on your debt as well. So this changes, but still, you know, 3/4 of the debt limit is free, right? It's not encumbered, if you will. The one other item, you know, I guess it's good to point out, there was a prior period adjustment. So what is a prior period adjustment? Well, we changed the presentation of something from the prior year presentation, okay? And that was that the sales tax. You do receive some sales tax proceeds. They were resident in the operation maintenance fund, building fund, whatever you want to call that, really needs to be over in capital projects. And I think we went over that on exit. Hey, look, put those sales tax dollars over in your capital projects. Two funds that it can be typically is going to be capital projects and over in debt service. And I don't think you have alternate revenue source bonds, and you probably don't get enough sales tax to even consider it. But anyway, so that's something to note as well. Okay, so that's this, or that's the audit report, so clean opinion, really didn't note anything. We did have the issue of the financial profile score. We made a note to ISBE, and I think you could follow up with that as well, once they give the designation out. And then we had prior period adjustment, really moving those dollars out of building over to, reporting wise, over to the capital projects, sorry, building fund, capital projects. Is it Fund 21? I kind of forget. I feel like you have a sales tax fund, and I'm not sure what it is off the top of my head.
Yeah, we use 21.
Yeah, so it's, and Fund 20 is typically what? It's the building fund, so I can see how that would happen. Okay, that being said, the handout. Okay, so we've had a handout here, and so the top section of the first page has the analysis of fund equity, far right-hand column, June 30th, 2024. Start at $34 million of equity, and what most of that is the interior component, you know, the building, the tables, the carpet, whatever, $26 million. And also there's funds restricted for specific purposes. So we get to the net equity in the operating funds, $5.453 million. Operating funds, ed fund, building fund, transportation fund, working cash fund, all combined. So, you know, there's a change there, a negative 2.9 million. Again, we said, well, you know, we saw in the building fund, you know, there was a drawdown of 2 point some odd million dollars that's included in that. So the center section of this page would be the results actual compared to budget, ed fund, building fund, transportation fund. Like to see plus or minus 10%. And most of those funds are that way. You can see the building fund, well, it had a capital project fund in it. That's probably hard to dial in as far as cash flow goes. And yeah, the transportation fund had 116%. So, you know, we've already talked about the bottom part of the page here, the financial profile score, and there is some additional that'll pop up again within the report. But really, the financial profile score is something that I key in on that bottom section. Next page of the report, and again, this is just those operating funds. If we look here, fiscal year 22, 23, 24, and the changes, you know, so the district brought in roughly $2.5 million less than the previous year. You know, the positives are real estate taxes, right, 508,000, and the big negative is the federal source funds, right, and that's going to be primarily what, your COVID money, right? I mean, it seems like COVID money kept coming, well, you're to the point where the fun is done, probably, with the COVID money. And then you can also see in the far right-hand column, just tracking through the expenses, a negative 2.8 million. Well, that was the capital project that you had going. So less expenses in the current year compared to the previous year as far as the building fund goes. Went from 6 million to 3.159 million. Overall, you know, if you track 2024 all the way to the bottom, $2.8 million deficit. This is before transfers. You know, so if we happen to have a transfer of $4 million being working cash over to another operating fund, that would be before that transfer. So, okay. Next page of the handout, you know, where's a dollar coming from? Well, you know, 39 cents on the dollar is coming from real estate taxes, other local sources, 14%. That could be interest earnings, that could be corporate replacement taxes, that could be the food service program. Then you can see evidence-based funding, 29%, other state sources, 7%, and the federal, 11%. Next page of the handout. You know, historically, what's happening within the categories and what is important to the district. Well, the real estate taxes are really, they're the most important factor as far as a category of revenue. But that evidence-based funding is really important as well here, isn't it? You know, as far as the magnitude of revenues coming in. The other local sources, again, would be driven by corporate replacement taxes, it'd be driven by interest, and the other state sources would be your transportation aid and maybe some special ed funds. And then the federal source of funds, again, you can see that it was high, it came down, and we saw that a couple different places, and that's going to be primarily the COVID funds that are getting less. Next page is the handout. So this has the categories of expenses for the ed, the building, the transportation, and then the total. And looking at things, you know, I would typically focus on salaries and benefits, right? I mean, so total salaries and benefits are up about 6%, went from 9.2 to 9.8. Overall, there was actually less expenditures in these funds than the previous year, but again, we focused in on what the building fund, right? And it had the capital outlay the previous year, and this year, not that it didn't have any capital outlay, but it was less than the current year. Next page of the handout. And so this is going to be unique, and it would have been unique last year too, if you put together the pie chart, where's dollars spent. Typically, you're gonna be pushing 70 to 80% in salaries and benefits, but there's the $2 million project that was spent. So it does skew the figure some, in the fact that capital outlay is 14% of the pie versus, you know, and I would assume that's gonna shrink up. I don't know if you have those projects continuing.
One more summer.
One more summer, okay, gotcha. And then the next page of the handout, what categories, what are the categories been doing, you know, as far as expenses? And you see salaries and benefits have been increasing the past, you know, few years. Same with purchase services, same with supplies and materials. And then you can see the capital outlay project in the previous fiscal year, you know, how much was spent. And then other objects is typically going to be payments to your special education cooperative. Next page of the handout is revenue. This is a simple, you know, hey, where's revenue, where's expenses? And we said, you know, so in the current year, the expenses are above the revenues. And again, it's before transfers, but we already talked about that. You know, there was a, you know, and we can look at the front page or the second page, but there was a couple $1 million there that's, the expenditures exceeded the revenue primarily due to the capital project. Same thing last year probably. And then you can see going back to 2022, revenues were higher than the expenditures. Next page of the handout, and these are just data points, and probably could put more in here, but you know, the average daily attendance, that's from ISB. That's a number that is reported to them, and it goes into the calculation on the bottom of the comparative estimated cost per pupil. As you can see, 878, 919, 921, and then the bottom, how much does it cost to educate the students? So again, 2023, the most recently information from the state on average grade school district, 17,609, and the district is spending 12,430 per student. Next page of the handout. You know, so we saw on the one page the categories of revenue, what is happening within categories of revenue. And we saw real estate is the biggest piece. Well, this is something to keep an eye on, you know, the assessed value, right? So the assessed value is part of the equation to come up with how much revenue does the district receive for real estate taxes, and you do want to see that increasing. And you can see 272 million, almost 273 million to 290 million. And then the tax rates on the bottom went from 2.7 to 2.8 as far as the rate is concerned. Fund balances, you know, so fund balances, there was a drawdown, again, related to the capital project that was in the building fund primarily, but there was a drawdown from 23 to 24, 8.4 million to 5.4 million. And then the next page, you can see the debt, you know, and again, 3 data points. There isn't that many data points here, but you can see went from 3.5 to 5.6, now to 4.6 after the payments. So anyway, so that's the report I have. You know, so number 1, unqualified opinion. Number 2, really not anything to note, you know, specifically within controls or compliance. Those are all good. I would say, you know, one thing, I mean, obviously I definitely wanted to see, hey, the financial profile score did drop. There's a reason for it, and I think ISB should be able to pick that out as well. I don't know if they'll change the score, but anyway, so those would be what I'd probably focus on the most. And then, yeah, I mean, the fund balances look they'll look okay, you have some fund balances, that's good, right? That's always good to have, and again, 3 to 6 months is what we look at. As far as us, the state or ISB, you start accumulating over 2 years in a fund balance, and that's typically a no-no. So, anyway, that's the report I have. I don't know if you have questions, comments, concerns.
I would say, is there anything, so when we bond specifically for the purpose of like the capital projects, like we put in air conditioners in our buildings, or we did large painting and we changed our security entrances and those kind of things that we're doing specifically for our buildings with that short-term borrowing, is there a different way to reflect that where you're not gonna see such a massive drop?
Yes, there is a different way. I'm not saying what you've done in the past is wrong.
Right.
Just by saying this, but you have a capital projects fund that you could run all that through, Fund 60. That could be another option. And what that does is it pulls it out of the operating funds and keeps the building fund, I guess. Yeah, I mean, it would be more of a trend, right? I mean, it would be just, yeah, it would be more of a trend. And it pulls it out of the financial profile probably. You know, since it's not an operating fund.
That's right.
Yeah, so you could do it that way, and again, I don't wanna criticize we have had other districts that have done the same thing. You know, it's working cash fund, transfer to the building fund, and we've built buildings out of it, we've seen buildings, complete buildings, grade school, you know, and it's like, well, if that's what you want to do, you can do that. So.
The thing that I really liked about Russ and his team is that having a different auditing firm come in it wasn't the exact same process as what we'd had in the previous couple of years. And so they literally asked a fresh set of questions, looked at things differently, and you know, a couple of times I kind of thought in my head, the last person didn't ask for that or wanted to know, and so it was just really good to have, you know, a different perspective, and so for 2 different auditors back to back say, yep, no red flags with your processes, the things that you're doing internally, you know, you're doing a nice job. You know, it'd be nice to have an office where we have, you know, a dozen people and everybody has their own, and there's a huge segregation of responsibilities. We don't have that, and so you know, we do that well. You know, and for a couple different auditing firms to come in and take a look at our practices and say, you know, that we're doing a nice job, you know, that makes us feel good.
Okay.
And again, we'll see you next year.
All right. No.
And thanks for saying
No,
that.
yeah. You know, I mean, your team we did appreciate your team. I will say that. Because like I said, we audit too many schools. I will freely admit that. And it's tough to bring another one on board. And, you know, when you do, you hope it's, you know, cause out of the scope of what we do, we definitely have a group that whether, you know, you transition the position or this year we had somebody that promoted the secretary to the bookkeeper and it hasn't gone well. You know, so there's those types of things that, you know, it was a pleasant experience.
We appreciate it.
Yep.
Thank you.
So, no, thank you much.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
All right.
Really appreciate it.
Mhm.
Did you have other things for your own report that I discussed now? Or-
Sure, you can do it now. Go ahead.
Sorry, does he make suggestions to you along the way, like, hey, you're doing a great job here, or you know, in that experience, that you could possibly use Fund 60, or
Oh,
is
for
he
sure.
giving you
For sure.
other ways?
Yep, they sit down with us on exit, and they've got a laundry list of, you know, they sit down with my team and
I
we go.
figured we only heard this part, but I'm assuming you
Oh,
hear
for
a
sure.
whole lot.
Oh, for sure, yep, no, they're super thorough.
Oh, nice.
So we had a presentation from the athletic director last time out, and the question was asked, what did those tryout numbers look like? You know, how, you know, what are we doing? And then, you know, I had a follow-up conversation with another board member. And so I just kind of wanted to put together just a little kind of, you know, sheet of all the different activities that our kids have at Northbrook. And so, again, I'm just putting this in front of you now. You can digest this at your leisure. And you know, if you want to have a follow-up conversation at a different board meeting, we can certainly do that. But this just gives you kind of a snapshot of all the different opportunities that we have for our kids at Northbrook. On the where we do have tryouts, we tried to list the numbers of the students who tried out versus how many spots we have on the teams. I tried to put the grade levels in there so you can kind of get a sense for, you know, as the kids get older, they do get more opportunities. I know that we've had some internal conversations about adding esports, because that was we've already added cross country, and esports was those was 1 and 2 with as far as student interest goes, off this interest survey that we did last spring. I don't know that we're going to get that done this year, but it's because it's kind of a new beast for us, and so, you know, we're taking our time. We're going to make sure that we have structures in place and we do it correctly. But we're continuing to look at that and to kind of move into that. But again, it's along the same, you know, vein that we've talked about, making sure that our kids are supported, making sure that our kids have opportunities, making sure that, you know, we obviously don't offer everything that our high school does, but, you know, just to give kids different experiences.
I think this would be helpful to communicate to the high school, only because I see at the freshman level that sometimes they struggle to populate the full teams in all areas.
Sure.
But it could be an unintended consequence when we have 41 kids trying out for something in 7th grade and we take 14, and then we have 35 trying out in 8th grade and we take 14. Like, there may be some interest from the high school level of, you know how they have like the club, like they'll do like the camps or clubs, or it just might be interesting to talk with them about the potential opportunity that if we're having to turn 25 kids away that are interested in a sport, especially if you turn them away 2 years in a row, the likelihood that they pursue that a third time
In high school.
when
Yeah,
they haven't
for
had a
sure.
chance to play in junior high, like it might get an opportunity, whether they want to partner with us on like a co-op type thing or a camp thing or something that gives them the kids, because I'm just fearful that when we're only holding 14 spots, which I totally understand why, and then they're looking for a bunch across so many more activities and they don't have enough, then
Yep.
I think
No,
that
for
would
sure.
be-
Yep. And we have monthly meetings with the high school, and so we can definitely add that to our agenda for our next meeting, for sure. Yep.
Are you meeting, I don't know what other sport plays in winter, like wrestling, and we don't do wrestling, so here's these basketball kids that could go to that sport that's not having enough, is that what you're meaning?
Yeah, or even like if the like a lot of times they do a camp for, like cheer this year for the very first time is doing a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, like instead of the little girls cheer camp, they're doing like a junior high cheer camp run by the high school. Like, so we had 33 7th graders try out for cheer, and we only took 8 for here. But maybe like if the timing of those types of activities and opportunities at the high school could still give the kids a chance to try the sport or be engaged in the sport, whether it's a sport we offer or don't offer, it would just be a nice opportunity to keep interest peaked in kids that maybe were not chosen in the 8 that get to officially do it. Like ways to continue, because I think they do that for a lot of the sports. I know they do for football, they do for cheerleading. Thought basketball had one. Yes, they do. Basketball has a camp. So the high school has these camps for our younger kids to continue to have exposure. And I'm just wondering if there's more opportunity, like maybe they do them 2 times a year, or maybe the timing of them is tied more to the, hey, we had 41 kids interested in this, we can only take 14, here's 25 that have still had a peaked interest. Like maybe doing the club or whatever over here after school as opposed to parents having to go over there. Like there just may be an
Sure.
opportunity to collaborate a little more closely across athletics.
It seems like kind of once your core group of kids is chosen at whatever grade, it kind of stays that way with a couple of them moving in and out, so. those extra students that don't have a place to go, can you say at least eighth graders maybe mingle with the ninth graders, and obviously they can't play the sport, but they could do practice, they could start
They
getting
could do
in on
something,
that.
right, that's what I'm hoping, is there some ways for us to continue to, even the seventh grade, like, seventh and eighth grade, either the beginning of the season or the end of the season, or like a couple practices, and do something to just keep the interest level up, cause we don't have a lot of club sports around here, so unlike areas where
Yeah.
club sports are super popular without a long distance commute, which is not the case here. These kids don't necessarily have a lot of other opportunity to keep the interest, or, you know, and then there's the financial burden of a club sport, and so, yeah,
Well,
there's
and they,
opportunity.
For sure.
seventh grade club basketball was canceled this year because there wasn't enough, so many of those kids were the ones that were pulled, not on these teams, so that's
Right.
kinda.
But I think too, the clubs present a different challenge because the cost,
Yes, yes.
timing, the location, but if we can keep it free or very inexpensive in cooperation with them, the benefit is on both sides. We keep our kids engaged, we notice great things for them, and then they potentially have a feeder for their programs once the kids get over there.
And you had any more conversations with Annie and the grant money that was going around at Youth Children? Like, has any of that ever made something?
So they have had, you know, they've had some, programs during some of our early outs,
Half days, yeah.
and, yeah, on our half days, and so, yeah, so there have been some programs that they've come up with some of that.
I know the next early out, isn't it dodgeball?
Mm-hmm.
This is incredible what we do offer. It just makes me a little sad to see the numbers that we have to turn away. It's like the amount of kids that are looking for something to do.
Yep.
That made it to the tryouts and tried, that I just hate to see us not have a way to engage them in something. I know we had talked at one point too about like maybe a club of just sports club or something like that, where they would come and try
Shoot
different
hoops
things,
and-
like, right, like just be active and have a place. It just, that, to me, that's just such a huge piece of school at this age, is finding that sense of belonging and
No, for sure.
positive.
Do other schools have A and B spots for some of their junior high stuff?
Some do.
And we did, I don't know that we do, but we did have that at, like, I know for sure at basketball, the other grades we did, but then they said at the younger grades it's more common, but the older you get, like sixth grade might have an AB, but by the time you get to eighth grade, you don't necessarily carry an AB, which is so weird, because then you get to high school and you have freshmen playing on varsity, but you still have a freshman team or a JV team, like there's so much opportunity, like, and stick them on so many places when they get there, but.
Right.
Yeah,
No, we can definitely continue those conversations, for sure.
that'd be great.
Yep, of course.
That was it for yours?
Yep.
Okay, we had no board committees or reports?
No, but we probably will fire up the health insurance committee here fairly soon. Yes, that'll be super soon.
Do we have any numbers yet?
We don't,
Okay.
but I will gather those, you know, we should have pretty good numbers, here shortly, since with it being, with the year being half over, so.
Interesting, let's see how that rolled out.
Yep.
Okay. Moving on to action items, our IGA with the high school for algebra. And that is, primary difference is it's here.
Correct. Yep.
So the teacher's moving and not all the kiddos.
Our teacher,
Our teacher.
yes, and so it will save the cost of not only transporting kids, but the cost of.
So what's is the IGA for the curricular resource then?
Yep, so
Okay.
the IGA is it basically says,
So the high
You're-
school
you're-
credit?
Yep, it's gonna be, our teacher, they need to be credentialed, they need to use our materials, still continue to use all of the same vetting processes, that we've used in the past, and so, a lot of the IGA is the same. The big change is that it's gonna be our teacher and the kids are gonna be here.
With the Holy Cross students.
So,
here
yep,
as
we
well.
will still make it available to Holy Cross students as well.
And I don't know on funding, I'm assuming they would normally pay the high school something to do that, so that would come here.
I would assume. I haven't had those conversations with Mr. Struna at Holy Cross, but we have very good conversations.
Yeah, usually it's the first period or the last period of the day.
Is it
Last period.
capacity to do it? We have teacher capacity to do it, we'll be our
Yep.
8th grade instructors
Yep.
that'll take that on.
Yep, and Mr. Wasmer's actually taught algebra before when he was, I can't remember whether he was at Peru or LaSalle, but he used to teach the LP high school algebra when he taught along with his 8th grade algebra, so he's very
It's the
familiar with
exact
this.
experience.
Yeah, for sure. It'll be great.
Alright, so we need
Nice.
a motion to approve the IGA presented.
Make a motion to approve the IGA at high school for algebra as presented.
Second?
Second.
And roll call.
Schrader,
Yes.
Haas,
Yes.
Landers,
Yes.
Kuminas.
Yes. Item 7.2, the school calendar. Is there anything specific you want to point out?
It's almost identical to this year.
And still very closely aligned with the high school?
Yep. The superintendent of the high school and I sit down and work through some things and try to align things as much as possible. And they continue to take a teacher institute in October that we're in session. But we make sure that our breaks line up as much as possible.
Is our first day of school far off from ours?
No, I believe in the past, I believe this year, their first day of school was Wednesday of that week and ours was Friday with kids. And so it will be at least that close, if not closer,
Okay.
this year.
Questions, anybody? Can we have that motion for approval?
I move to approve the tentative 2025-26 school event calendar.
Second?
Second.
Call.
Haas,
Yep.
Landers,
Yes.
Schrader,
Yes.
Kuminas.
Yes. Alright, is there anything else for discussion items, Brad?
Yeah, just wanted to, put a reminder for everybody, for our upcoming board meetings is when we start our annual visit cycle to
Tour
other.
of schools.
Tour of schools to other
Tour of
buildings.
schools.
And so the February meeting will be over in Lincoln. I assume it will be in their AP room next to the office, because they've updated that a little bit. March will be at Northbrook, which I assume will be in the teacher's lounge. And April will be at Blackstone, which I also assume will be in the teacher's lounge.
Just let them know there's gonna be a prize at the end for the, remember when we had those cute notes from the class that we were in? That was so sweet.
That was
Okay.
super sweet.
Alright,
Why do we do, there's one coming up next week, I think, so, or in February, so it reminded me, we have 2 months where there's 2 days off on a Monday and a Friday. I always just thought that was weird.
Super weird, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's, and it'll be again the same next year, and so it's parent-teacher conference week.
Mhm.
And so even though it's a 3-day week, it's super busy, because 2 of those 3 nights, everybody's working until, 6:30 to 7:30 at night, taking care of conferences. And so then the Friday off is when you have conferences at night, then you do that for 2 nights and it accumulates basically a day off. But it's really nice in that my philosophy has always been, and will always be, whatever you can do to break up January, February, March until spring break, you take advantage of it, because it's the absolute worst stretch of the year. The weather's cold, you can't get outside, it's kind of the dog days of the school year. And everybody's just trying to get to spring break in one piece. And so, whatever I can do in a calendar to build in some quirky little things or breaks or something to, give everybody a quick breather, I think that's super important.
If there's no other items for discussion, could we have a motion to